Now it's time to put 11 and 12 on the back, as you can see, and they just glue straight into position. No problems there. Now before we can put on our balkwood strips that you can see there, let's put our stem post on, and that's about the easiest way to do it. Just clamp it in between the keel and the stem itself and it'll sit there all nice and happy. And make sure this is dry. I'd give it a couple of hours, and I'd also put it on with Araldite, 2-part epoxy. So the 3 sections are on now. The stern and also the false keel are on, and they, as I said, were put on with some Araldite. And you can see right there that we've created a rabbit line all the way around, which is the line between the false keel and the plywood keel. So the way you go about putting the bend in these balkwood strips, put them together, port and starboard. Get yourself a weight, something like a bulldog clip, just so it doesn't float, if you will, and then a container and fill it full of water. Pop the strips in there. We only have to really go about halfway because the rest of it will bend around alright. And then just leave those, and you can leave those for about an hour. And then what that'll do is that will waterlog those 2 pieces of timber, and then it'll flex it up enough for us to put a template around it and bend it around until it's dry, and then we can go ahead and put it on the boat. Now while we're waiting and our piece of timber is soaking, if you get a piece of board, this is one technique, only another technique on how to actually put that bend in the front so it will bend around there all nice and easy. Now in your kit, as we got the deck out of, you've got a piece of laser plywood there. Now you can use that as a template. Put it down on a piece of ply and just draw around that, and that'll give you the shape of the bend at the front and all over the deck for what you want. Now just this 1mm piece of scrap wood, you can see what it is that we're doing. Put the nails around about a 3/4 centimetre apart at the front to about this far, and then you can start to space them out, but where it's more needed for the curve. And then with the piece of wood that's soaking being thicker, it's harder to do it than this, but for the demonstration, a 1mm board, it would be saturated and waterlogged, and you'll put it in your jig like that, and then get yourself another nail, and at the end of it, and then we'll just put another nail in there like that, and then when that dries, that'll dry in that curve, and that's the way to go about that. So soak it for an hour and then bend it slow, creep it in, another nail to wedge it in right at the tip, and then put it in and then slowly bring it around and let it dry. So here it is now. They've been soaking away for about an hour, and you can see what we've done. We've simply bent it to the curve because it's waterlogged and the timber will bend a hell of a lot easier. And then just at all these stations, have a good look at it. If you need to move one of the nails over, push it over that way or pull it in this way, whichever you want. And then if you just put one of these little spring clamps on, you'll get exactly what you need. And that's plenty. Now leave that as for a complete dry, an overnight dry, or until you can pick it up, and know that there's no water moisture in there, because any water content in there will play with the adhesive that you end up using. So it's got to be bone dry. First thing this morning, we've taken them out of the jig, and as you can see, they've stayed in the shape that we want them. Now, because we've used their template, the kit's template and the deck, everything should be absolutely perfect. So let's just put it on now and Yes, it is. It's absolutely perfect. Now if you can just see in there, everything meets the deck, meets that bulkwood all nice. So we'll secure that. And you know the tip that we're talking about here now is these frame horns here, don't put glue behind them, because when this is in place we're going to get a razor saw and assisted by a pair of pliers, and these will come off. We're going to plank over the top of those, so the glue will go on these frames here, and on the edge of the deck we'll put a nice little thin strip there to assist it, and of course down the back here to complete this transom here. So that's that. I'll do that and we'll come back and then start on with some technique of how to put the planks on my way. Alright, let me show you how we go about setting up with this bulkwood now. As I say, there she is. Now, if you put the front part of it in that little section where it's supposed to go, which is quite obvious, what I want you to do is line up all the frames as you can see it. Line up the bulkwood with the tops of the frames. So what that's going to give you now, with the tops of the frames like that, is exactly where it's got to go. Now then, get your pencil and you can mark on the inside a line. When you take it off, you'll actually see what the distance is of how much deck that you've got that's going to be there, which is about, it's about 4 mil. Now then, transfer that line onto the other side and scribe it along. Now, put it back. Now what I want you to do, and this is for precision work, and we're model makers, everything is precision because I like perfect. Get your pencil, make sure she's in there all nice, bring it back to level again, and right in the middle of that frame, draw a line. Right in the middle of that frame, draw a line as we can see there. Righto. Load up your smallest drill in your Dremel and pre-drill this plywood with one hole right in the middle of that line that we're just talking about. Right in the middle there. Like that. And do that all along the series of holes which I've done. Then we glue it up below these frame horns, so you put your glue down here and stay away from these horns up the front. Stay away from up here, just put your glue down there because we know what depth it is because we've measured it. Put them on. When they're in position, out with a hammer and the tack and nail them into position. Last one, onto that frame and bulldog clip him on. And again we've got to wait until these are really secure, and then when they are dry we can take them all out and we can start cutting those frame horns off. So let's do that. All on now and we're in the drying mode, but one thing I just want to point out is what we're after is right in here where the bulkwood meets the deck, minimum gap if no gap at all. So you might need a couple of bulldog clips on the top and sort of steady the bulkwood to make sure she's all nice and straight, because it's got some large cannon holes here which will weaken the ply. So do what you can to straighten them up. And then when we do the inner bulkwoods plus the outside planking, it'll come to a stage where we can sand it all nice and straight. So don't worry too much just at the moment. Everything will come good. Perseverance is a model maker's best friend.